afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us this afternoon to debate what the future holds for the media and entertainment industry. I'm sure there's a lot of debate going on around in the industry on the impact of COVID and how that will change things for this industry. We have an eminent panel today to debate this. We have Rana Barua, who's the CEO of Havas Group. We have Pradeep Dwivedi, who is the India CEO of Eros. Rohit Jain, who is the Managing Director of Lionsgate India. We have Rajan Bhalla, Chief Marketing Officer of HT Media, and Ashish Sehgal, who's the Chief Growth Officer of Zee. Welcome, gentlemen, and sorry, myself. I'm Jehil Thakkar. I'm a partner at Deloitte and lead the media and entertainment practice. Welcome, gentlemen. I just wanted to set the stage by saying that we've now been in this COVID and lockdown situation for a few months, and are likely to be in, at least in the COVID situation for some time. And there's been a lot of discussion on, what the impact has been so far on the media and entertainment industry, drop in advertising, consumers not getting delivery of newspapers, all of that. So there has been a lot of discussion around that. So we won't visit history and do a lot of discussion on those topics unless we want to refer to it to set some context. But rather than that, bring it back to what do we need to do in order to spur demand as the economy is coming back? What do we need to demonstrate as ROI to clients? Most of us are aware of the economic situation in the country. We also would like to discuss how consumer behavior is changing, how companies in this sector might be re-looking at strategy and business models and monetization going forward. So it's leave it at a bit more of a future-focused discussion. So with that, I'm going to first delve into, I think, what is core to what will drive a lot of change, and that is changes in consumer behavior. Now, do we? Let me ask the panel, and do we believe that consumer behavior will fundamentally change? Yes, we've all made changes. OTT viewing is up, TV viewing is up, digital newspapers are up. But do we believe that a lot of these changes will hold? And as a result of that, what changes will come about? If I can, ask the panel this specifically, Rajan, if you want to just start off, then perhaps we can go to Rohit, Pradeep, and anybody else who wants to join in.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Thanks for your introduction and the question. I'll come to what you are saying in terms of whether fundamentally will it stay, will it change? But I think here are some of the observations, and I'm going to skip what is already known to a lot of people. But and I'm going to stay a little more in the news media space. I think that's an important area. I think what we have seen is that news genre as a space has seen a very clear pickup during this period, and not surprisingly so, because it obviously started with a lot of COVID-related piece, which continues, and I think there seems to be a long journey ahead on that. But importantly, COVID also kind of gave rise to a lot of fake news that was going on at that point in time, WhatsApp messages and all kinds of things. And I think that's where what's happening is that the traditional media brands, which are seen as a very credible kind of media brands, are emerging strong in terms of the go-to brands for getting credible information. Now, what's happening in consumer terms is that obviously this whole advent of online news has seen a dramatic shift, and may I say that it's actually leapfrogged a few years for India. in terms of digital adoption. And online news, we've seen overall almost a 23-24% increase in user base. We're also looking at more than 40% growth in time spent on some of this media. And slowly, steadily, what's happening is that this digital consumption, which is going up, and the digital consumption, may I clarify here, is not just about news as a genre, and not just about e-papers in specific, but it could be to do with sites, apps, OTT, notifications, podcasts, what have you. There is that seismic kind of adoption that we are seeing at the moment. And my sense is that this over a period of time will form a part of consumer behavior, which may not really, which is only going to kind of speed up the online adoption and how they are going to be looking at it. So from my perspective, I think it will be a mixed bag. I do also believe that consumers have short memories. Who knows, 1 year down the line, we'll all be looking back and saying, hey, there was something called COVID and there was a pandemic that hit in 2020. But I think there are certain aspects of consumer behaviors which are going to stick, which they have adopted now. And there are many of them. I'll take a long time in explaining those, but certain other aspects will slowly, steadily start coming back to normal. When that happens is pure conjecture. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Rajan. So, Pradeep, any perspective on that from you?
I think I kind of agree with what Rajan just said. The human beings have a big tenacity for having a resistance to change. And I think once change is kind of imposed because of external environment, and in this case, the whole coronavirus situation, I think the habit formation of a new nature takes an inordinately long amount of time. So, it's a bit of a spring effect, and people tend to spring back to their natural state of comfort, which, assuming if this situation sort of eases out soon enough, you will see, people falling back to old habits. But I think what is fundamentally changing, and that's the nature of the human discovery and consumer behavior, is that once they learn a trick, a shortcut, a more efficient way of doing things, I think that sticks. So where people will see value, whether it is in consumption of news on digital platforms, as Rajan pointed out, or engaging with one another in terms of meetings, in terms of making business presentations, in terms of the consumption and creation of media, I think those habits will tend to be longer term in nature, not because they're constrained by the environment, but primarily because they have now become shortcuts and more efficient ways of doing things. So those will definitely survive. I mean, when we look at, for example, the OTT consumption trends as well, we see a large number of people now diving deeper into the OTT content that is available beyond the first streams. Typically, an Eros Now user typically would have come in and seen the initial list of movies that is there, but now they're going deeper and deeper and discovering more content. So we believe that a similar trend will continue to follow, where if you have good content and good methodology of content discovery, the content producers will actually find richer returns.
Rohit, any views?
Yeah, let me first start by saying hopefully all our viewers who are watching this they're all doing safe, they're all safe and sound, their families are well. Hopefully this too shall pass. But I think, let me put it this way, there's so much of debate around the impact of COVID on human behavior. I don't know whether it's a misplaced sort of way of looking at it. I don't know whether human behavior fundamentally is changing. If you see anything that's a barrier to information, time, efficiency is an inevitable change, right? If you look at media, for example, it's probably a medium that started from physical location, Nata companies, and moved on to bioscopes and cinema, then radio, then TV, now OTT, right? So these are just barriers to distribution and reach. And I think technology will continue to play a role in solving for those barriers. Certainly, I think what COVID has done is it's fast forwarded that massively. Like Rajan said, I think something that might have otherwise taken, I don't know, maybe 5 years, 10 years, has got fast forwarded, both on the media side, as well as a massive change in terms of just digitizing the economy. I don't know whether, demonetization could have achieved as much as what COVID has achieved in the last sort of 10 weeks. So certainly those agendas have got fast forwarded, but I think that was an inherent evolution of human beings in terms of just solving for reach and the entry barriers of reach distribution. The bigger impact is more in terms of just business models. Again, because it's got fast forwarded, our business is ready for it. In terms of being able to adapt to it, in terms of being agenda ready, in terms of being P&L ready. There's certainly a short to medium term, depending upon how long this lasts, impact on a P&L point of view, how our business is going to sort of tactically take care of that. It's also a great time for innovation. I think the way I keep telling everybody, the unlocking of the sort of the locking of the world has unlocked the minds, right? And I don't know, because there's more time for reflection or what, but these are great times for innovation. In terms of everybody I talk to are doing stuff that they didn't really think 6 months back that that's the kind of stuff they'd be thinking about. So I think it's a lot of change in terms of how do we sort of see businesses. Human behavior, I think, is, we undermine the human resilience.
Yeah.
If you look at the quick examples, China, Disney World opened, sold out capacity day one. Up close Bombay, the day government allowed a little bit, traffic is back on the roads within a day. Again, I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but that's how we will behave. Human interaction, face-to-face chat, all of those things, going back to cinemas when the time comes, those are things that will come naturally to us.
Yeah. So speaking of that, I mean, that leads me to my next question, and which was, given that the country's opened up over the last few days, are we now seeing, clearly that was a blip in terms of behavior and therefore business for the media industry? I mean, are we now seeing people coming back in terms of consumption patterns? And, also advertisers, are they looking at media differently? Are they changing their plans from what was? Rana, perhaps Ashish, as well as you, if you can weigh in on these.
Well, I think, so it's naturally interconnected with both the, your first question and also the entire environment. So if I just take the first question, just partially to answer the question number 2. So, the consumers, naturally what we saw, at least from a very advertising and a media and overall perspective, we saw that, they kind of got conditioned to a certain environment that got created, whether it's pre or post, we can't even say, because it is COVID time. So for us now, it's become a COVID time for many, many months. So I think what we saw is that they got conditioned to a certain environment. We saw certain habits forming. We can, say that some habits became very innovative, some habits became very modern and all. So what we saw that the clients were naturally, and most marketers and advertisers were naturally also working around that environment that was there. So a total lockdown environment had a certain behavior and a certain way the media was behaving. And what we see now, and these are very, very early days, and which is why I think the entire conversation is about taking this entire thing forward, where there's even a partial opening up or a gradual opening up, is seeing that the confidence of a lot of clients coming back. A lot of clients are naturally very positive. We are seeing a lot of sentiments of spends coming back. We can see different figures that are being quoted in various places. Internally, when we are seeing some of our figures, we are seeing that maybe we have gone back to pre-COVID time in terms of around 30%, 35% of media spends of pre-COVID time. I'm not talking full time, but the other thing I just want to make a clear point here is that the way we have classified essential and non-essential has also kind of dictated the conversation, which may be fair, may not be fair also. Maybe it's a separate debate, but the way it got termed as that there were certain things very essential, and that became the reason why we were supporting, or we saw a lot of advertising or conversations around it, like hygiene, food, etc. And versus certain very, very strong essentials became part of non-essentials. So if you look at white goods, if you look at electronics, if you look at soft electronics, there's so many things which are part. And now you'll see a lot of these spends coming back on mobile phones. You're going to see a lot of spends coming back on most of these categories that we are seeing. So to answer your question, movement has started. I'm pretty positive about what we are seeing as initial results. And, that is a good sign for us.
Okay. Ashish, do you want to weigh in on here?
Yeah, so coming in, first of all, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me here. And now, coming in last year, very little left to say. Actually, I think most of the panel members have said a lot of things which I would have said also. So let me figure out or find out something what different I can, say here. I agree with Rohit when he said that, it's a time capsule which actually got forwarded, pretty much in time. And the behavior which we were seeing, any human behavior is continuously changing. So there is a change happening every day. Now that change would have taken a little more time. Possibly this whole unprecedented situation has created, a situation where everything got fast forwarded, and people have started to utilize a lot of media or a lot of other habits that possibly would have taken a little more time. But it was always there in the offing. It's not that we were not seeing these things happening. There were guesstimates and estimates saying that, okay, this will happen in 2 years, this will happen in 5 years. A lot of that has started to happen now, whether it is media consumption, the form of media consumption in platforms, etc., or people's own, or rather consumers' own habit of their day-to-day life. That has, in a way, been reinvented in this period. And I'll add to Barwa's thing where, he said that, during this period, a lot of essential items which you used to think that, after roti, kapda, makan, there is a fridge and there is a television, which is always required, right? That has become a non-essential piece in this situation. But it's only very, very short term. It's very, very short term. This is going to, this habits will come back to obviously start spending on these kind of, items, etc. In very recent, I mean, the moment, the economy has to kick in, once it kicks in, government has already come up with stimulus, etc. So hence, I believe that it will be another 2 to 3 months that we will start to trickle back to the earlier pre-COVID, at least kind of a scenario.
So you're not seeing any fundamental shift in, say, advertiser thinking that, look, this has kind of opened my eyes to doing things a little differently, or, given that consumers shifted more to digital, etc. So is there any signs of that happening, Rana or Ashish, or that's all?
Okay, yeah, I'll add to that. So, yes, the fundamental change which has happened to advertisers is that they have now started to look at the ROI even more deeply. Earlier a marketer would spend money more from brand, and hence ROI could not measure from that perspective. Yeah. Now, even for branding during this period, they were asking, a whole lot for their ROIs, etc. However, yes, the way media is consumed, whether it is TV, print, television, or digital, out of home, those will start to shift a bit in terms of percentages. If digital was gaining space in media landscape of an advertiser, that has taken a little more precedence here. Possibly what you would have spent 2 years from now, he started to, I think, see the results right now. And hence they're, consuming more of digital medium for their marketing spends. Television still, I'm in the core of television right now, so I know how things have happened during the post-COVID area or the pre-COVID scenario, and now how things are again picking up. Today, the situation is that June is better than May, and it's better by 20%. July, the kind of projections which we are looking at is at least going to be 40% better than what June is. And so my estimate is by October, we should be back with the kind of run rate we used to have during pre-COVID scenario. Maybe not that of last year, October, because that was an unprecedented month, which saw a huge jump in advertising at that time. And also coming to, a lot of content which got held up during this period. everyone will be creating lot many content. Live events will start coming back. Sports will look at coming back. Like an IPL, right now rumor is that IPL may happen in September. So if all those things comes in, there is a whole lot of eyeballs which will be available for advertisers to choose and spend more and more. And please understand, October seasonal time is also a time where every consumer product or any product which is selling tends to create more consumption habits in the consumer. Hence, that is the time when we'll have to kick back that habit into the consumer to start consuming more and more. And advertising has to play that role. And so will have to the media.
Okay.
If I may just add to that, I think Ashish spoke about the recovery, but I think at least one of the ways in which we are looking at is there's also a little bit of shift in marketing approach that we are looking at. Look, I think television advertising historically has been a very feature-led advertising, right? In your 20-second, 30-second slot, focus has always historically been largely on focusing on the features of your product. And digital marketing, I think, took that one step further to make it into a experience-led marketing because you had slightly longer time. I think these are interesting times to focus on a little more, innovative marketing, gamifications, transactional engagement, right? What's in it for you? Sort of make it a little more topical, make it a little more transactional, but also a little bit of gamification and move away from sort of feature and experience. Because in the short term right now, I don't know whether consumer really cares for the features of the experience. How does it sort of fit into my day to day? And that's the degree of shift sort of that at least we are looking at in the, Rana, of course, Rana and his team sort of guides us on our marketing. Those are the kind of conversations we are having internally.
Rana, are you seeing that from other clients as well, or is Rohit a flash in the pan?
Yeah, in fact, if I can now just take this again, to a one step ahead. What is coming out, and so I'll just refer to the COVID times again, which is not something which you realize is that a lot of us, and this is a universal, we are trying to come out with a study hopefully by July, which will kind of exhibit we're doing it in a sample size of a decent sample size, which we've seen in many other countries. It's called the Meaningful Brand Study. So what you will probably figure, what we're trying to figure is that, when brand cease to interact and have a meaningful connection with you, or a relevance or some kind of a conversation, whether it is in the most toughest times or whether it's the challenging times or the best times, when when we are in a celebratory mood or when we are absolutely fine, if you look at it, that probably you'll realize that there's so many brands which have disappeared from the life in the last 90 days. I don't want to name them, but they've just disappeared. And what if I just take it away completely? Would you miss them? Would you talk to them? Will you engage with them? Because you've suddenly become a smart human consumer, and we started adopting new things. So yeah, so that's the scary bit. But like I said, we won't get into that because we want to be positive. We want all the brands to come back into our lives, and we want everybody to, because the consumers are there. There's so many people in this. But what we are seeing truly, and if I had to merge Ashish and what Rohit also said, and I'm sure a lot of other clients we are seeing, is that what is the conversation that I'm going to have with my consumer, and how do I keep a story going with him? And this will going to become a more and more important story for a lot of clients or marketers, as we know them, is that how do I keep a relationship going? So for example, if Rajan has to keep a relationship going with all of us, he has to keep a constant dialogue, which is to be meaningful, which is where, a lot of interesting stuff he's doing on Mint, or what Rohit is doing with Lionsgate, or, what Ashish is doing with his brand Z. You see the underlying point that you will start picking up. You'll see that there's something called very interesting conversation, that how do I engage? How do I have a meaning with this consumer, whatever that audience profile be? Because if I'm going to just come and give him an array of conversations and choices and discussions, he's going to shut himself down because he's already shut me, So a very, very interesting time coming up for both the clients, and definitely a lot of us in the advertising media side to figure out how to keep this bridge very, very engaging.
I think you make a great point there. I mean, one is obviously dealing with all this volume and keeping your message clear and targeted. Now, we've seen, I mean, as we see some of this behavior move to digital, etc. And this leads me to a segue in a question we have from one of our audience members on YouTube. Is do you think clients will redefine customer segments? So will there be a greater relationship now from a direct to consumer standpoint? Will that we've seen companies like Disney create a direct to consumer vertical almost or in the US. So do you think that that is now mandated from a media company strategy standpoint?
Dale, if I can kind of just take on that, I think this segment of one is a concept that is now here to stay. I think the concept of segment of one has been spoken about for a long time. People have tried to, create approaches that then deals with very minimalistic, very sharply defined set of demographics in terms of content consumption patterns, content preferences, time of consumption, and all the other variables. Today, for example, if you look at databases and you look at validating any kind of database in a digital platform with people like Lotame or Adobe standard reference databases, you will find close to 1,000 or 1,200 variables that you can potentially play with. I think increasingly what is happening is that all media vehicles that are rooted in digital may not necessarily be digital content play. For example, even print or television, which is a linear broadcast, may also need to have a very clear view of the end consumer preferences being defined in that segment of one, and to be able to actually customize content for appealing to as many people as possible at the same time. So the challenge is actually going to be extremely technology-led, to my mind, to be able to actually make sure that you are investing in right proportion for maximum audience gain, as well as where there is individual consumption of content, specifically in an OTT or a digital context. There you are able to give the consumer exactly what he or she wants. And that will define the success and sustainability of any of the media organizations.
Jail, very interesting what you have just said, Pradeep. I think, if we go back a few decades, okay, and I'm talking about late 90s and all of that, Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi, Kahani Ghar Ghar Ki. So, every time you wanted to communicate to a set of consumers, you had to create some lovely commercials, and these were platforms that you would take, and you will know that your reach targets are achieved, and then you can sprinkle a few other platforms, and you get to wherever you wanted to get to. I think one of the significant shifts that's going to happen post-COVID, and I firmly believe that that's, of course, pre-COVID also the millennials behaved very differently from the earlier generation in terms of very me kind of syndrome. What's in it for me? And that's what they always sought. But I think what's going to happen now is, and this may be true for us, for Pradeep kind of businesses, for Rohit, for all of them, is there'll be a sharp focus on community building. Okay, there are going to be emergence of communities, right? Even COVID has actually led to community building in the area of suddenly people start cooking at home. So there are food buffs that are coming into play, right? There are certain genres of OTT content that they want to see. There are people who are going to be very interested in certain other spaces. So I think somewhere as marketers, as we go forward, defining what communities you want to play to and defining what offerings actually are relevant for those communities will become critical. And I think that's a very significant shift as I see it from what was a spray and pray kind of strategy one point in time, and it used to work, to a very sharply targeted strategy.
Great points. So, I just want to take a sideways question to that. Now, obviously, like you said, Pradeep, we're trying to target content at down to an audience of one, as well as simultaneously address large audiences that we might want on television. And will content creation practices, how will they change? I mean, given that one, obviously currently there's not a whole lot of new production going on. But even when some of these shackles come off, we're able to get back onto sets and start. How can content producers start thinking differently? How are content producers As we know, many of them are, small, medium-sized production companies, etc. How are they starting to think about, how to target some of these audiences as well? And similarly, Rajan, I think from a print standpoint, are you also then addressing more and more targeted or smaller segments in order to achieve greater ROI from a print industry standpoint? So I'll let Pradeep go first, and then Rajan, perhaps you can follow.
Sure.
So thanks, Jill. So I think you bring out a very salient point today. And while, all of us are keen to get back on the shop floors and, get our production started, get the talent back in the scene, there is obviously concern in the ecosystem. There is concern on the talent front, as well as the regulatory front, the kind of conditions that are being stipulated for us to recommence production. And I was, sharing with a friend earlier that when we do cost assessment, it will typically be 3 times the cost. And it's not that we're unwilling to pay that cost. But the question is that even if you incur that cost, your ability to guarantee a completely aseptic environment, which is completely clear of coronavirus, and de-risk yourself, both from an insurance standpoint as well as a health and safety of the employee standpoint, is very difficult. Yeah. As with anything, I think technology is one big solution that is coming into play. And, all of us have traditionally used green screen technologies to do some kind of scenario shooting where, it was pretty much complex. We have used technologies such as visual effects and post-production to finish up the movie in such a way that the overall end product looks very appealing, etc. And we've seen good success out of that. I think 2 fundamental shifts that will happen is that the whole VFX ecosystem will now move much further ahead in the value chain, and it will not wait for a post-production VFX to come in. So essentially, if I was to just give, for instance, we have recently kind of tied up with Epic Games, which runs Fortnite, which is one of the largest esports that runs, and they create these virtual universes. So our ability to take their Unreal Engine and create a virtual universe, which could be set in a modern context, which could be set in a mythological context. Imagine yourself being a Keanu Reeves in a Matrix kind of a universe. That is exactly what is going to happen. So what you're going to see is going to be a combination of the talent performing in an environment which is completely safe and secure with minimal risk to himself or herself, at the same time leveraging of technology in such a way that the outcome is near real. Now, big question would be, can, as you pointed out, small or medium producers afford that? As with march of technology, we have always seen that as you invest more in a particular technology paradigm, the costs disproportionately start to go down. Whether you look at computing power, whether you look at your smartphones, and I think the production technologies are not anathema to that. It's exactly what is going to happen here as well. So we believe we will have an optimum sweet spot of technology investment that will allow us to create great compelling content with the level of authenticity that the audience desires and expects, and more importantly is willing to pay for. I'll let Rajan take a shot at his side of the business.
Okay, my side of the business is not as entertaining as your side of the business, but let me give it a shot. So, Jail, I think what is going to happen, and I'm very clear about this in my head, finally, it is about the content that is going to define whether you will get the eyeballs or you won't get the eyeballs. And when I say content, it might seem like a very global statement to make, but really, there is a big difference between, let's say, Gen Y and millennials in terms of the kind of content that they want to read. Okay, and I think digital newspapers for a pretty long period of time, and by definition, because they are what they are, have really been looking at serving needs of all in some manner or the other. Right, trying to kind of do a little bit of everything so that different audiences get catered to. I think for newspapers to really sustain themselves, we will have to make the content far more relevant to the kind of segments that we are talking about over a period of time, so that there is that connect that you build. I think brands will have to also become younger in the way they present themselves. Brands will also have to start connecting with the millennials in a very different way versus they used to earlier. And I think what is also changing in the ecosystem, and we shouldn't forget that, the content can be platform agnostic. So a print plus digital is the way a company like ours would view the entire ecosystem now. How do you take consumers from print onto digital platforms, from digital back on print platforms? And technology sitting right in the middle actually today can be a big enabler of how those transitions are going to happen. So everything can't be covered in a 24-page newspaper, but you know what? Content can become complementary in terms of how the two come together. So I think eventually it is going to be all about that. And I am an optimist, and I think newspapers have a long runway in this country, and they will continue to be. But I think they will have to do it in conjunction with very smart strategies on print plus digital together.
So speaking of that, print plus digital, and I mean, we've talked about, or the industry's talked about digital, and the coming monster of digital and eating up existing businesses and all of that. But monetization remains a problem. Now, if this pace of digitization accelerates because of things like COVID, etc., are we looking at a crisis in the industry where where monetization is a problem on digital, and will that continue to be the case? And how do you then monetize all these digital eyeballs? Have we seen any innovation? Have we seen any practices today that we think can become best practice for the industry to emulate and then grow? So I don't know, Rohit, you want to take back at that?
At least over the last couple of years, we've seen, on the contrary, monetization for digital improve drastically. And that will only continue to sort of improve on account of many reasons, right? Look, I think digital payments is becoming more and more prevalent in India. Thanks to the number of payment methodologies that are available today. For the longest time, the country was caught up between net banking and credit card low penetration. I think some of those bottlenecks are going away, right? So, and the kind of stuff that I think Jio, Facebook, all of those consolidations will continue to do will only improve their agenda. So, I think so one bottleneck was really just the digital payment ecosystem. And I think that's certainly dramatically different today where it was compared to 2 years back. And I certainly, like to believe 2 years from now, it will only be significantly stronger. I think we'd probably be one of the benchmark countries in terms of just digital payment ecosystem for a country with very, very low net banking credit card penetration. The second is just, in terms of the models to pay, right? And that ecosystem is evolving, right? Whether do you have a monthly subscription? Do you have a daily transaction? Do you, in a country like India, in emerging markets, do you work with telcos for wholesale distribution? I think those are methods that are still evolving, and they'll continue to evolve for a couple of years. But I certainly think digital ecosystem today, from a monetization point of view, is significantly better than what it was a couple of years back. I think a couple of years back, this was still almost like a case study, right? Yeah. If you look at where the digital numbers, so SWOT, for example, if I'm not wrong, 2016 or 17, which is not too long back, I don't think India had more than 7-8 million total subscribers on digital ecosystem. Today, my understanding is, give or take, that number is between 25 to 30 million. And at the pace we're growing, this should be comfortably over 50 million in the next 2 to 3 years. So, I think on that count, things are certainly changing. How much of that change that's coming because of COVID is temporary or permanent, difficult to say. Because right now, obviously, linear is struggling on account of not having fresh programming, all of that. So digital is gaining, but that's all a factor of how long will COVID last. If this is a 6 to 12 month phenomena, digital is obviously gaining. If this unfortunately turns into a 12 to 24 month phenomena, everybody's going to be a loser, because eventually will come a time there won't be ability to pay. The only winner would probably be free to air, back to DD free dish.
Yeah. No. So I think that's an interesting point. But I just want to get some more debate going on this. So yes, India's ecosystem and infrastructure for digital payments is improving, but Are there, so the Indian viewer or the Indian consumer is always, there's often said that, oh, Indian consumers don't pay for content, right? We've become too used to the free stuff, which is why we see so many freemium models, etc. Is that changing in your view? So, let me ask, say, Pradeep, and then followed by Ashish. I mean, you guys also have a view of, comparison of the Indian consumer vis-a-vis the overseas viewer. So it'd be interesting to get your perspective on that.
Thanks, Yael. So clearly, the compelling nature of content is what will get a subscriber or a consumer be willing to pay. And then obviously there is the question of what is the elasticity in your business model to be able to price the product at a level that you believe is affordable and scale it up over a period of time. In our experience, what we have seen, and as Rohit also pointed out, there is a combination of a B2B and a B2C model. You really want to get large audiences to experience your product, so you are perhaps willing to take at a more aggregated view of whether a telco partnership or an e-commerce partnership, etc., to have your product reaching out on a paid basis to a larger number of subscribers. And just to add on to what Rohit said, the number of paid subscribers actually is already in excess of about 60 million across all of the paid platforms. And if you look at the registered subscribers on freemium model, it actually runs into close to 400 million in India, even if you take out the duplication. More importantly, what is happening is that as you move forward in this ecosystem, the compelling content that you have is typically around discovery of content that you've already created. The whole ecosystem today, and we don't have anybody from the theatrical ecosystem in the in the panel today, but they would vouch to the fact that COVID has really impacted them bad because they have to socially distance, seating, etc., etc. But parallelly, the whole ecosystem of new releases going straight to OTT is a wonderful debate that's happening in the industry. Is there merit and value in being able to take brilliant new straight off the shelf content onto OTT platform and monetize it effectively? It is easy to do the latter, but easy to do the former, but underwriting the latter is really the challenge. And I think today people are confident that they can not only recover their investments and marketing budgets, but also make a good case. And it's not just in India. I mean, you look at Universal's Troll World Tour example, they actually made more money by just putting it on a streaming platform than what they had hoped to make in the theatrical window in the first 6 months. So clearly that value equation is changing, and there are many ways to extract that value. Digital payment ecosystem is one, large B2B partnerships is another, but ultimately a strong B2C connect based on value delivered for the product offered is what will determine long-term customer intimacy from my mind. Which is why, at our end and a lot of the premium streamers end, the effort is to gain the affinity of that audience on a paying basis, on a sustainable level, and give them value for it. You have to delight the consumer, and there is really no substitute. That's a mantra that remains valid whether you have COVID or you don't have COVID. I'll give others an opportunity to add to this.
Thanks, Pradeep. So let me add here. Firstly, Jahel, when you said, consumer are not used to paying for the content, etc., I think it's a wrong statement, because consumer has been paying for the content for last couple of decades. Cable operators and your DTH players have been charging consumers.
They think they pay for access, but when you implicitly ask them to pay for content.
Correct. So the only mindset, the way the consumer looked at it was that they're paying for the access for the content, but in reality, they were actually paying for the content. Now that mindset has come to change. So with the digital coming and offering products directly to the consumer. In fact, in a similar mindset, actually, when DTH got launched and your, cable operator or your DTH guy came directly to your home to say that, here is the access through my dish, which is, and you have your own dish. Now you don't need to go to the cable operator. Hence, you're going to get all the content you want through this. Once he established the access point with the consumer, or whether it was a cable operator or the DTH player, then came what is the kind of, bouquets you would like to choose. And that's where exactly consumer is choosing the content and paying for the same. There are, right from the beginning, there were packages which was $100 or maybe a $75 right in the beginning, 10 years back, which has grown up to about 200 odd, per capita. And it used to be, DTH guy used to charge us about $250 for the, normal SD connection, which has grown to about almost $1,000 today. So, the per capita consumption or, payment by the consumer has been growing over a period of time. However, there is a lot more content which has started to be, offered to the consumer. Now comes the access to the consumer directly as per his choice through digital, whether it is OTT or any other kind of digital medium content he wants to, whether it's newspapers or etc. etc. They are getting, offered to be consumed in any form, and hence they have been given a choice whether to consume that also free by a lot of players, and there is OTT players etc. who are giving them an option to be behind the paywall and start paying for the content they have been offering to them. So even if you see today, only in India now you have a award model. Like in other part of the world, especially in US, etc., the only not paywall is the streaming content which you're getting. Okay, otherwise almost everything is behind the paywall. Very few OTT platforms are offering this thing. However, here in this country, other than Netflix and Amazon, almost all players are, at least the Indian players are providing you or giving a consumer an offer of free content through OTT as well. So there is a choice for consumer in this country, which is a beautiful thing, because unlike any other part of the world, there are very limited choices a consumer has. He's been given a choice to pay either less or more. Here is the choice, even in the TV or a linear format, where you have a free dish, where you can consume content completely free of cost. And there is a premium content available through DTH and cable operators. And for that, hence he's paying. And with this NTO coming in 2019, it was made very clear to the consumer that whatever you want to see, you just pay for that and start consuming that content. Hence, consumer in today's consumer, in his mind is actually has started to pay for the content. Right. Coming to, and I'll touch upon also what Pradeep just mentioned about, theatrical releases and the movies getting released on digital now directly or on OTT platform. This is another beautiful business model which has developed thanks to COVID. It possibly would have never come into any studio's mind, that to start launching their movies, etc., on the OTT platform, unless and until commissioned directly by some of the OTT guys, right? Now, what will happen is that the market will expand. It's not going to eat away with the theater releases. Theater releases are still going to be there once, theaters open, etc. People will still go to theater. Today people are not going to theater for just watching movie. It's a complete experience in itself, even if it's a single theater, a single screen theater. Forget the multiplexes. Obviously, multiplexes is a complete experience on its own. However, there is a large number of consumer who is also wanting to watch more and more content, which is provided to him at his own access point, which is possibly at his home or wherever his access point is through his digital, handset, etc., etc. So that market has suddenly emerged. So what will happen is there will be more and more jobs for studio makers, or more and more content which will be created, which will be possibly now targeted towards that consumer, which is want to just consume that directly onto the OTT. OTT will have another business model by having, creating a TVOD model also. Right now, everybody is working on SVOD model, but you possibly can have a TVOD model. Same thing can go on to DTH. Tata Sky and all these guys has been fighting for, or the DTH player who has the technology to show consumer what they want to see. I mean, pay for the movie and watch it on their this thing. They will also start to suddenly actually have that kind of an option or an offering for the consumer. So I think the ecosystem is evolving, and it is evolving for the better.
Good. Thanks. So I think I'm going to go to some related, I think we have about 10 minutes left. And so I just do want to take some audience questions. I think one of the questions is that, do you see the rural market or the Hindi heartland? We've also seen a few channels again go back to free dish.
Yes. We have also,
etc. Yes. Is that driven by the growing a lot of the government programs of targeted spending coming from there, etc., migrants, etc.? What do you think is driving, and do you think that market will continue to grow And Rana, do you think this is now a lot of advertisers now looking at this market a lot more seriously, say, than they were doing 2 years ago? Or
No, I think they were always looking at the market. So I think whether you split it between urban and rural, the point is that you also know the reality of the country. If you divide it into any SEC, also we know where the entire the class and the masses are coming from. So the penetration as a challenge continues, and whether it's a power brand or whether it's a large brand, whether it's a FMCG brand, whether it's most of the programming that we are talking, everybody will like to get what we call as the value chain right at the top. You get a certain number, but when you need to get into India, it's the penetration, which is why such large many international brands come to our country, because they get so excited with the dynamics of the numbers and the penetration and the population, and then they suddenly get rattled that how do we do it? What do we do it? So I think that will continue. That it will never what medium will finally get to them. Whether it will be a medium which we are familiar with, or it's a newer medium, whether it's TikTok, which is now caught them by storm. It depends on what kind of conversation. And I agree with everybody that, like I keep saying, that it's the content which will drive what form of content, whether it will be engaging, whether it will be short form, whether it will be movie form, whether it will be fun. But that rural, or you can call it the semi-urban, which is now becoming higher in the pyramid chain for most marketers. I think the numbers are definitely lying out there. If I'm going to go for a massively volume business, and value naturally will come, because just to answer one quick one, for the earlier conversation, I definitely am. We see a shift of people reaching out to their wallets to pay a bit more for better content and a better programming and better kind of forms of engagement. So you would see that also happening. So in all, I think it's good for us that because like I keep saying, it's not going to change automatically, but the point is that the consumers that are emerging, and I think Rajan did touch upon it, there is a new form of consumers, what we call as the younger or the millennials, and all, they are going to be a bit more different with the way we have seen the country behave in the last many years. And what the COVID is actually has demonstrated that bit, that there is definitely, if you see your own house or any houses where there's a family and you've got children, and you will see that there are two different worlds operating in one same house. And coming from an advertising background for the last 90 days has been not an insight for me, but it's completely made it clear to me that there are two different worlds parallelly working right now in our country also.
Yeah, speaking of two,
a very, very quick point, and I'm not going to belabor on this, but I think with the migrants going back, it's obviously not clear whether they're going to come back, they're not going to come back, but in millions as they are going back to their hometowns in UP, Bihar, and all of these locations. Rural is for certain categories may just look up even better than what we've seen in the past.
Yeah. And speaking of two different households, etc., I just wanted to ask, was the launch of and the success of a lot of the retro content like Ramayana, etc., was it a big surprise to you guys?
Or not really. So nostalgic. Sorry.
Then it behooves the question: if it wasn't, then why haven't we exploited library before like this?
So you see, a lot of channels have exploited something like this, where we put a lot of nostalgic content in our afternoon time bands. But because of so much talk about happening of the fresh content which continues to come on, what happened in the Big Boss, what's happening in Saregamapa, or which singer is winning on in Saregamapa or Dance India Dance, or KBC questions. So the talk has always been around the fresh content. But there has been always a content which is being exposed to the consumer in different time bands of television. Hence, there was not much talk. Now, when there was no other content which was getting fresh, and there was no talk happening around the fresh content, this nostalgic content became the prime consumption for a consumer. And it started to have that precedence, because people really wanted to go back and see whatever they used to love earlier. And when they got exposed to those content during this period when they had no other fresh content to view, I think that took the precedence, and it also started to get talked about.
Ashish, there is also, sorry, go ahead, please.
Yeah. So that's the that's why I would say yes, the content was always available to the consumer. It's because that became the choice of today in the COVID scenario. It saw a lot of rating, backing it up, and as well as there was a lot of talk happening around it. Yeah, you were adding something, Raj.
No, I was just saying, and this is a hypothesis. It may or may not be true, but if you recall when Ramayana used to happen in decades back, there used to be almost nobody on the streets because it was all family viewing.
Yes.
And then the family dispersed into their own platforms. But what COVID did was bring the families back again together. And one of the big drivers of some of this content getting consumed back again is also, that whole watching the whole piece together, which has been.
This goes back to where we started. We started the debate about saying, does the consumer behavior change? Right. The reality is it doesn't, because in times of, in troubling times, you tend to go back to your roots and basics. Right. You go back to your Ramayana, you go back to your Ludo, you go back to your Antakshari, you go back to your cooking. That's what keeping everybody occupied today. You want to go back to your home, the whole migration process.
I was about to come to that. What Rohit is saying is actually, if you look at the consumer insight, maybe many years later, it's going to be fascinating because a lot of advertising stories will, or let me just put it, communication stories will come out of this year, because it's actually going back to basics. A lot of us have gone back to basics. Fundamentally, people have gone home. This somebody said roti kapda makan. It's gone back to that. It's very simple. That's why I'm coming from a very strong advertising medium. My point is, which I keep telling most of my clients, don't stop talking to your consumers. While I understand there is no sales happening, I understand there's a big challenge, but you must keep the relationship going on with your, the consumers. Don't go out of their mind. Don't go out, because, if the consumers walk out of this and forget you, it's going to be a massive challenge to go back into their life again, because they've kind of, they've gone back to basics, like Rohit is saying. So
yeah, I agree with Pradeep.
If you,
sorry,
it's a controversial thing to say, but I think the other reality is the content of 80s and early 90s was probably the best content that we've had. It was very progressive, and it thrived on positivity and hope, right?
I think there is a bit of a combination. Sorry, Rohit, am I interrupting? Please.
No, go ahead.
So I just wanted to add that, the two questions are kind of interlinked. The whole move towards discovering markets beyond the metros has been a phenomenon which has been in extreme sort of focus over the last decade. I think the regional print media organizations such as, Bhaskar, Jagran, HT have done a brilliant job of actually capturing on that sentiment. And I think it is time the other mediums sort of caught on to the fact that there is not only a huge demand for content, but there is also a propensity and willingness to consume and pay for it. So that's point one. Second is this whole mythological, things like Ramayana, etc. running. We have to look at it not from a, a religious content perspective, but more from a socio-cultural ethos of a country as a whole. I think there are these universal stories that have been passed on in generations. And I think as you move to the hinterland India, or so-called interior India, which to my mind is actually the real India, because they are also wanting to aspire to all the things that are global and all the things that are universal, and yet they want to remain rooted in your own cultural ethos that they have seen over a period of time. So what is basically going to happen is that we will find new ways of retelling the same stories. A Ramayana may not necessarily be told in a, Ram, Ravan religious context, but may be told as a fight between good and evil, manifesting itself in a new story format, which is based in current scenario. And I think as filmmakers, us and a lot of other studios are looking at these compelling stories to create content that then links back to India. And I would just sort of defer to a segue to a small example here. If you look at Parasite, which won the best international, not just international, but the global best movie award. I mean, it's a quintessential Korean story set in Seoul, and the storyline, language, everything is very typically Korean. And yet there are universal values in that movie that a person, whether in Bareilly or in Berlin or in Birmingham, can relate to, because the aspirations of, desire to grow, desire to be successful, jealousy, aspirations, all of those are universal values. And as content creators, whether on, entertainment side or on news side, if we stay true to the core of what our brand promises to our audiences, I think we will have a sure shot path to sustainability and profitability, COVID or no COVID. That's the way I look at it.
I think on that hopeful note, to cheers to prosperity coming for all of us.
Indeed.
I want to thank all the panelists. I think we've hit 4 o'clock and our time is up. So thank you, Rana. Thank you, Pradeep. Thank you, Rajan, Ashish, Rohit. Appreciate you guys coming here and having a discussion. I hope the viewers found it useful. And thanks very much.
Thanks, Jay, for a
Thank you.
wonderful conversation. Thank you. Jay. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Exchange for Media. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.